Good evening. Welcome to the September 23rd meeting of the Aiken City Council. If you so inclined, we'll rise this time for the invocation, which will be followed by the pledge. Let's pray. Dear Father, we're thankful for this opportunity to come together to take care of the business of the city we love. We ask that your blessings would be upon us, that your wisdom would be granted to us, and that you would lead us to conduct the business of the people in a way that would honor you. We just pray everything that would be said and done in this meeting would bring glory to you. In your name we ask it. Amen.
Amen.
Now I'm going to ask Captain Brian Brazier to come up and lead us in our pledge. Captain, good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We want to welcome everyone for coming out and being a part of our meeting tonight. I'd like to start off by reading our guidelines for our meetings. Meetings are public forums in which many opinions are expressed and the business of the city must be conducted. As such, disciplined, honorable, and professional decorum is paramount. Courteous and respectful communication is expected. During public hearings, all questions and statements from the public shall be directed to the chair. If you wish to speak, raise your hand and I will certainly recognize you. Please approach the podium and state your name and address. In order to allow an opportunity for everyone who wishes to address council, speakers should limit their comments to the subject being discussed. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes to address an issue and may only address an issue once unless questions from council are posed to the speaker. Guidelines stated, I'd like to recognize our Mayor Pro Tem, Councilwoman Gail Diggs, for additions and deletions to the agenda.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? With there being none, I make a motion that we accept the agenda as presented.
All right, we have a motion to accept the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Yep.
All right, thank you, Councilman Waltz. All those in favor of the agenda as presented, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. The minutes were provided to council for their review before our meeting. Is there a motion at this time to accept the minutes as presented?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Councilwoman Gregory and Councilwoman Price seconded. All those in favor of the minutes as presented, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to item 2 on our agenda, old business for further consideration. Item number 1 is approval of appointments and discussions of appointees to various city boards, commissions, and committees. And I will recognize our city manager, Mr. Stuart Bedenbaugh. Mr. Bedenbaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have the following considerations for council. Councilwoman Diggs has recommended the reappointment of Ricky Brown to the Recreation Commission for a term to expire September 1st, 2021. And she has recommended the reappointment of Gary Yount to the Community Development Commission for a term to expire September 2nd, 2021. And the appointment of Carrie Fromer and Sarah Wilderson to the Equine Committee for terms that would expire January 28th, 2020. And Councilwoman Price has recommended the appointment of Leila Wolf to the Equine Committee for a term to expire January 28th, 2021. And that's what we have before us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Bedenbaugh. Is there a motion to accept these appointments?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman Price. Seconded by Councilman Waltz. All those in favor of the appointments stated earlier, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Are there any considerations for our next meeting?
I have a couple. I'd like to reappoint Phil Haggerty to the Building Code Appeals Committee and also Graham Reynolds to the General Aviation Commission.
Very good. Any others? All right, those names will be considered at our next public meeting. Moving down to old business to item number 2. This is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to annex property at 504 Henry Street and zone it RS10 residential single family by title and ordinance to annex to the corporate limits of the city of Aiken certain property located at 504 Henry Street and zone the same residential single family RS10. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman Gregory.
Second.
And second, Councilwoman Price. And before we have comments from staff, I'd just like to recognize that Councilman Waltz has recused himself on this vote. So, Mr. Beedenbaugh.
Thank you. We do have, pursuant to our water and sewer annexation policy, the annexation of 504 Henry Street to rezone, or to zone as residential single-family upon annexation, and it was unanimously recommended by the Planning Commission, and you approved it at first reading at your September 9th, 2019 meeting.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? Okay, all those in favor of this second reading, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous with the recusal of Councilman Waltz. Item number 3 is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to rezone properties at 127 and 129 Silver Bluff Road from residential single-family RS8 to limited professional by title and ordinance amending the zoning of real estate owned by Sim Real Estate LLC from residential single-family RS8 to limited professional LP. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman Gregory. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Jericho, comments from staff?
Thank you. The applicant is requesting the rezoning to limited professional from residential single-family RS8. The Planning Commission unanimously approved this at their August 13th meeting, and council unanimously approved it at first reading at their September 9th, at your September 9th meeting. And it's before you for second and final reading this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Beanbaugh. Any comments from the audience? Okay. Comments from council? And I would like to say for the record that Councilman Waltz is abstaining from this vote also. With that, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous with the abstention. Welcome back. Item number 4 is the second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to approve a quitclaim deed to Aiken County for Old County Council Building, for the Old County Council Building at 736 Richland Avenue West by title and ordinance approving a quitclaim deed to Aiken County. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Jericho. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. Comments from staff?
Thank you. We have before council tonight second reading of this ordinance. Essentially, this property was occupied by the county from the mid-1980s to 2014 as their county council building. The property was transferred, we believe, to the Aiken County for a health department building in the 1950s by the city. Review by the city attorney believes a transfer via quitclaim deed is appropriate in order to expedite the use of this property. And at this time, a deed showing city transfer cannot be located in the city files or at the county files at this time. Council reviewed this at the September 9th meeting and approved it at first reading. It is before you tonight for second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Beanbaum. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
Just have one or two, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Parking lot goes with the building, is that correct, based on what I can see from the design plan, right?
That is correct. The parking lot is part of that parcel. The city actually in 1985 deeded the parking lot, the surface parking in the rear of the building to the county in order for it to be paved. We did have that ordinance in our records. And that we would be deeding over the building plus the surface parking lot to the edge of the tree line, which is a different parcel.
Okay. What is the multiple county park issue that I meant?
The multi-county park, that is, we are in discussions with the proposed developer and the county and the school district about a multi-county park, which is a fee in lieu agreement where the developer would make payments in lieu of taxes to provide an incentive to assist in the redevelopment of that property where the hospital is.
That's a different issue.
And the
It
rear.
doesn't include this.
Well, a portion of it could. There are some discussions to incorporate perhaps the parking portion
Okay.
of this property in question.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to item 3 on your agenda, new business, consideration of. Item number 1, this is a first reading of an ordinance to annex 1746 Two Notch Road Southeast and zone it residential single-family RS10 by title, an ordinance to annex property located at 1746 Two Notch Road Southeast and zone the same residential single-family RS10. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Girardeau. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Waltz. Comments from staff?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Per the, our water and sewer policy, 1746 Two Notch Road is up for consideration to be annexed into the city and be zoned RS10. The Planning Commission at their September 10th meeting considered this and unanimously recommended it be annexed and zoned RS10, and it is before you tonight for first reading and public hearing.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments or questions from council? Hearing none, all those in favor of this ordinance on first reading, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to item number 2 under new business, this is a first reading of an ordinance to annex 416 Pine Avenue Southeast and zone it residential single-family RS8 by title, an ordinance to annex property located at 416 Pine Avenue Southeast and to zone the same residential single-family RS8. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Councilwoman Gregory and Councilwoman Price. Comments from staff?
Thank you. We do have an annexation also pursuant to our water and sewer policy of 416 Pine Avenue Southeast to rezone, to annex and zone residential single-family RS8. The Planning Commission heard this, considered this request at their September 10th meeting and unanimously recommended to council it be annexed and zoned RS8, and it is before you tonight for first reading and public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Beebe. Any comments from the audience? Comments or questions from council?
There are 3 other properties. If you look at the
Picture.
yes. Are these, is there an indication the other 3 properties will be considered in the future as well?
Yeah, we have, have been reaching out to properties such as this that are contiguous to the city. And at this time, they have not responded that they desire annexation.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in first reading for this ordinance, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to item number 3, this is a first reading of an ordinance amending the land development regulations regarding performance guarantees. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman Price. Comments from staff?
Yes, we have before you an ordinance to amend our land development regulation involving performance guarantees. We last amended these in October 2017, and the consequence of the amendment was that it would allow or require that the performance guarantees are issued before the grading permit is issued. Subsequent to the amendment that was 2 years ago, we found that the timing is a little different and could be more appropriate, and that our process is a little more onerous than other communities in the CSRA. We compared it to Columbia County, Augusta, Richmond County, City of North Augusta, and Aiken County. And this amendment still requires performance guarantees, but changes the timing to allow site improvements to be done prior to the issuance of surety or performance guarantees, while still permitting staff to have the ability to ensure that the improvements are adequate or bonded when timed with the issuance of other permits such as building permits. So I know one of the goals of this council is to try to look at our processes and streamline and be business-friendly as the case may be, and we believe this is a time where that is appropriate. Engineering staff, planning staff, and the city attorney have gotten together. We've encountered this with a developer, and we believe that this strikes a good middle ground. It still protects the city, but does not hinder approved development that has already come to the council.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Beaver. Any comments from the audience? Comments, questions from council?
Any negative comments from any developer?
You're talking about this proposed amendment, or to get to it? Well, no, not about the proposal to the amendment. The feedback we got is when you include the grading, that elevates or escalates the costs for the bond, and in looking at other jurisdictions, they allow the grading. They allow the grading before the value of the project is calculated.
But it still requires a bond for, yeah. Okay.
Yes, it does, Councilman DeWar.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Okay, all those in favor of this amending ordinance on first reading, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 4 under new business. This is a first reading of an ordinance to amend city code regarding special tax assessment from rehabilitated historic properties by title, an ordinance amending the Aiken City Code regarding special real property tax assessments for rehabilitated historic properties. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Waltz. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Giardo. Comments from staff?
Yes, this is also a little bit some cleanup to provide some written direction to the planning department and the planning commission and design review board regarding this matter. The DRB specifically has reviewed this and recommended that the special tax assessment for rehabilitation of historic properties be amended, and it's designed as currently written and will continue to be, if this ordinance passes, to promote the rehabilitation of historic property by freezing the assessed value when improvements are made that exceed the 20% of the appraised or assessed value of the property. The Design Review Board had several meetings in the spring and summer to consider amendments to ensure that transparency and consistency is done in the implementation. Essentially, what we've had is our processes were not well defined and potentially could be, without it written down more plainly, it was subject to more interpretation. We believe that by having this written down, it's everybody knows coming in what the rules of the process are. And we have also seen some discrepancies between the letter of the law and the actual application thereof. So these changes are before you, and essentially what they do is they regard the applicability to the properties, the direction, once they receive final certification, but before the implementation date, the text amendment, there are 7 properties that that this falls under and provides guidance to should they ever be rehabilitated. So we have this before you tonight for first reading.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments or questions from council?
Just, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No? Councilwoman Price?
I'm trying to, for public dissemination of information, simplify this to the public. If I were reading this, give me a 6th grade.
Right, it's one of those things that's simple in concept, very difficult to explain.
Give me a 6th grade version of how this should read if I were reading this.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Thank you.
One of the issues is that if you enter into the historic preservation tax credit program, that
it allows internal things within a property to be assessed by the Design Review Board for historic preservation standards. Those costs also count to you being able to use the program. So what the code says is that in perpetuity, you have to, for everything then, after you are in the historic preservation tax credit program, so you've gotten your taxes, you've gotten approval from the Design Review Board, and your taxes get frozen at that,
10 years.
at the pre-value for 10 years, that if I come back for any additional building permits, things like that, to the interior of the home, those also have to go all the way back to the board. The board felt that was fairly onerous. So what this allows, the change in text allows you to do is at the time of the initial visit, when the Design Review Board assesses the property, you can set certain specific, maybe architectural components inside the home as requiring that higher level of review, but then everything else is under just kind of the regular building permit process. So I don't have to go talk to the board for something unnecessary. It allows me to kind of do more with the interior of my property with it having well-defined from the onset of entering the program. So for instance, you know, there might be a particular banister, or we've seen murals, things like that, that might be worth preservation inside the house. So if somebody does a basic kind of, you know, bathroom fixture remodel or having to change things out, they're not going to have to go all the way back through the board or something like that. So it allows them to establish that at the time. It also allows people who are already in the program the option of being under the old set of rules, which says everything has to come back to the board, or they can have the board come if they feel they're going to be in the program long enough and worth their time to come evaluate whether there are any specific things inside the home to go ahead and define, to be able to do that, so they could go and make other changes again without having to go back through the board process. The other thing that it clarifies that's worth noting is that it aligns with state code. We didn't have any language in there. It was vague for some of those who didn't know that if you transfer property, that you don't, the new owner can take benefit of that. So the 10 years remains. And that's in the state code. So the language gets stuck in there. We're putting that in there to align with the state code to make that clear for people who are entering the program, as well as the county offices, as well as they're implementing the program on the tax side, that just because the property is transferring, ownership gets sold, a new owner can then carry out the remainder of that benefit that was allowed to the previous owner.
10 years.
That's right.
Can you explain the 20% number?
So that's kind of the other thing, is the 20% number. That was probably the most significant change when the new version of this program got rolled out a couple years ago, when the ordinance was repealed and replaced essentially. Previously, if I was rehabbing a property that's owner occupied, it had to be 50%, or if I was rehabbing an income property, it had to be 100% of the value to be able to get me into the program. Now that value has been reduced to 20% to try to incentivize more people to do so. One issue that we've ran into, and we've kind of amended the language, or the Design Review Board is recommending amending the language in here, is that a lot of people have started to do small upgrades over the course of time, and with that 20% threshold being so much lower than the 50%, you can kind of find yourself eligible for the program accidentally, where you've gone over that amount of money that you didn't think you were going to, so to speak. And so it allows them to look back retroactively for 12 months that somebody can still claim that benefit if they've done that much work to their property to be able to meet the threshold.
So it's a running account, so to speak. You just figure out how much you're spending this year and next year, and when you get to 20%, then you're going to retro for the beginning of the program for 10 years?
No, so 12 months. It's a 12-month period at the onset of the program. So it's got to be a 20% value into the property in the first 12 months.
Okay.
And then, so again, you're not having to go retro anything in that 12 months ideally. And the other thing is that within that 12 months, that makes the work more easily verifiable. The older it gets, the harder it is for us to verify that the work is actually done.
And what happens to work done after the 12 months?
It can't get you into the program, and so it's kind of a strategic, I guess, point on behalf of the owner at that point, as to, I mean, the idea is that the program kind of emphasizes a single, or at least a fairly concerted effort to do the rehabilitation, so that if you do it slowly over time, it's kind of just more, with that 20% threshold, if you're not meeting that at an onset, if you're kind of meeting that incrementally over the course of 10 years, you're probably doing mostly maintenance and those sorts of items and small upgrades that probably doesn't warrant being into the program.
So work done after the first year doesn't count,
It doesn't, right, it doesn't count. but it's-
provided you've been in the program.
Right, yeah, it can't, yeah, so because you don't want to, essentially, then, you'd have to kind of reassess. I mean, it's generally not to their benefit anyway. It's to their benefit to start that clock on the first year most of the time, because that's generally pre-rehab is ideally the lowest value that they would have.
But it could count if you didn't apply to the program, and as you went along, you realized you have spent 20%.
That's right.
Then you could apply to go into the program.
Right, yes, yeah, so that's why we allow that's why that language is included here about a 12-month window where we can look back and verify that work be done.
Any 12-month window.
Any 12-month window, yeah. So there's not certain start dates. It's just within a 12-month window, if you meet the 20% expenditure, we can set this pre-rehab value as the frozen value.
And how many folks have taken advantage of this program so far?
Right now, we have currently, I believe, 12 within the program. There have been several that have timed out recently, and some of them have been interested in speculating whether to do additional rehab and get back in, but right now we have roughly 12.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Fine.
Any other comments or questions?
Got to cross the street.
All right, all those in favor of first reading of this, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous, thank you. Moving down to item number 5 under new business. This is a first reading of an ordinance approving the development agreement for Pressley Station on Beaufort Street. By title, an ordinance authorizing the city of Aiken to enter into a development agreement with Black Oak Ventures LLC for the development of property located on Beaufort Street Northeast, TPN 121-07-03-001. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Councilman Diggs. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Jarrett. Comments from staff?
Thank you. Council, you may remember that we approved the concept plan and the zoning for this parcel over a year ago and with a different developer. And that developer sold their interest to this new entity, Black Oak Ventures, and they will be building the same sort of product, the townhome type development on that 9-acre parcel. As part of the design of this, it was realized that the lift station, the sewer lift station that services the area needed to be upgraded. That lift station is located over at the SPCA off of Willow Run Road. What this development agreement before you tonight does is the developer will pay to upgrade the lift station. And we will reimburse him 70% of the cost because the upgrades to the lift station, the developer his development ultimately will use about 30% of that capacity. So he will bear that cost up front. Once we get verified and certified payments, once the work is done, we will begin to pay the developer back for those improvements on our behalf. And it will also increase sewer capacity for that area and hopefully spur some additional development in that eastern corridor along Beaufort Street between the Willow Run, which will be Children's Place's home, back towards Richland and the SPCA area. So we have before you tonight the development agreement that allows for this to be done for council's consideration.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Beanbaum. Any comments from the audience? Comments, questions from council?
When will we be able to hear from representatives from Black Oak?
Well, we've been in contact with them. We could ask them to come to a work session to give kind of an update because I know they are ready. The property changed hands probably at the beginning of the summer. And we came, I think you were part as the meet and greet. He came down and the mayor and yourself and some staff met with him. But he's ready to get going, and this is one of the last pieces of the puzzle to start this project.
And then can we see concept plans or, because they're different from the original? investor,
They're
right?
pretty much the same.
Oh,
It is
very
the
good.
same. But we would, I can see the developer lives in Greenville, and I could see if he could come and maybe just give a brief presentation or update to council. It is a new individual. I think the gentleman that you considered and passed the zoning and the concept plan for, those folks have sold out, so this is a new individual.
Very good.
What's the
Thank
cost of this lift station?
What we thought, about $200,000, Mike, I believe, was
At
the,
100 and something.
Our cost?
That's
no, I believe that's the total
115.
total cost.
Is the 70%.
What is it again?
Okay.
Approximately $200,000
That's total, right?
total. Our share would be
115.
about 70% of that.
Which is
Yeah, or
115, correct?
115,000.
So where's that money coming from?
I would propose that we use some of our economic development money that we budgeted in our current year budget.
Makes sense.
Are they attached at all to Pressley's? Are they connected to Pressley's at all? Is that a totally separate LLC?
Apparently, the new company is different.
Right, so one, but he said for us, so it's 115.
Thank you, Mike. And it is about 115 for us, our cost, but I think the cost was close to 200, but I guess actually it's a little less than
It
that
was about
since
a
115 is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Very good. All those in favor of first reading of an ordinance approving the development agreement for the Pressley Station on Beaufort Street, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 6 under new business. This is a first reading of an ordinance approving a lease agreement for the use of property at 1613 Two Notch Road by the Aiken Community Theater. Is there a motion?
Hi, Summer.
Diggs, is there a second?
Second.
Councilwoman Gregory, comments from staff?
Yes, the Playhouse building that sits at the corner of Price and Two Notch was constructed by and occupied by Aiken Community Playhouse from the late 60s to 2003. Subsequent to them moving to the property here on Newberry Street, it became our ceramic station, our ceramic center, now is a used for storage. ACT has used this space for rehearsals and made some minor interior improvements, and they wish to expand the use of the facility, and they're willing to make some capital improvements so it can function as a performing arts facility. And we do have a lease before you tonight for this, and I don't believe, do we have anyone from the Playhouse here? I haven't seen anybody come in, but we do have this for council consideration tonight. But I don't think with anyone from the Playhouse here, if there are any questions, I don't know we could pass this on first reading if you so desire or not, but if there are any questions, there is no one to answer.
I think we'll have another reading, so if it.
Okay.
Any comments from the audience? Any comments from council?
I think it's a good thing.
All right, and all those in favor on first reading, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous, thank you. Moving down to item number 7. This is a first reading of an ordinance to sell property to the South Carolina Highway Department for right-of-way for Hitchcock Parkway road improvements by title, and ordinance authorizing the city of Aiken to convey real property to the South Carolina Department of Transportation. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry. All right, Councilwoman Price made the motion.
Second.
Councilman Dewar made the second. Comments from staff?
Yes, first, right as the time as you were considering the minutes, a handout was passed. I received this when I got back from lunch today from the right-of-way agent for DOT that has the draft title and a map of the parcel, which is also up on the screen. As we know, the DOT's beginning in 2020 will begin intersection and safety improvements along Hitchcock Parkway from US 1 to Silver Bluff Road, or SE 302. And as part of this in this phase of the project, they are purchasing right-of-way from property owners where the improvements are needed. This parcel was purchased by the city in about 2012 as part of the Peggy's Pond parcel. Some of you might remember. They will have a turn lane here near where Hitchcock Parkway and Highway 421 intersect. So you can, as you're heading north, you'll be able to turn right onto 421 and head back into town heading east. So the appraisal that of this 2100s portion of that parcel came in at $2,800, which is what the DOT is offering at this time. And we have this for council consideration, first reading tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Beedenbow. Comments from the audience? Okay, comments, questions from council?
Just one
Mr.
quick
Dubois?
question. I'm not a construction guy, obviously, but am I reading correctly that they're going to erect a steel guardrail in the middle of that road where none exists now?
Yes, looking at this, I don't know if I would say it's in the middle of the road, but yes, there will be a guardrail, and I think it will be at the edge of the road. They're expanding the right-of-way through there,
Yeah,
ultimately
okay.
for a turn lane.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I just wonder whether that's the norm for them to place that rail.
I can't tell whether it's going to be on the,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be on the edge of the roadway. I think the turn lane is going to be further to the north.
I think the property they're buying from us allows them to move that rail over to the edge of the roadway.
Okay.
And it does increase the right-of-way footprint at the road right there, since they will have a right turn lane, a dedicated right
and
turn
to
lane.
make that right turn lane.
Mr. Beedenbock, we have someone from SC.
Yes.
maybe here to clarify that on second reading if it passes.
Yep, we can do that.
Very good. All those in favor of first reading of an ordinance to sell property to the South Carolina Highway Department for right-of-way on Hitchcock Parkway road improvements, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous.
It's a great buy for SCDOT.
All right, item number 8. This is a first reading of an ordinance to authorize an interfund loan for capital project sales tax 4 project. By title, an ordinance to authorize an interfund loan for capital project sales tax fund projects. Is there a motion?
I so move.
All right, Councilwoman Diggs, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Councilwoman Gregory. Comments from staff?
Yes, as we discussed some in the work session, we did have a proposal or a quote as part of this project for capital project sales tax 4 that was grossly incorrect. We estimated, or the estimate we were given, which we relied on, gave us an estimate of $500,000. And after submitting the proposal, the one firm that we got back, the project can be done to replace the swimming pool at Smith Hazel, which was built in the 1980s, as well as build a new room for changing and restroom facilities. Was $1.2 million. We've added, we're asking for a little bit of extra contingency, so the total project cost was estimated at $1,250,000. We would pay this back with CPST proceeds, and we would borrow from our general fund, equipment replacement fund, and special holding funds. We would repay ourselves with interest at the local government investment pool rate. And we have before you tonight first reading and a public hearing of an ordinance to authorize this loan to proceed with this project.
All right, thank you, Mr. Beedenbow. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
Just for completeness here, I walked in a little bit late for the meeting. Did this include the pool in addition to the pad, or did I think the record should show this. The pool and the pad?
The pool,
Yeah, and
Everything.
to your point,
Right.
when
Everything
it
on the
was,
picture.
when it was initially, the initial price was basically just to rehabilitate the pool and the pool house. So it was a much more basic approach that we had approved. And if you look at the plans, I wouldn't say it was grossly under quoted, because it's two completely different projects. So you have what we thought we wanted versus what Jessica and her team presented, which is something that is much, much more than what was initially intended. And so I feel like we need to
Which
make
is a good
mention of
thing.
that, which is a good thing, yes. And so we need to make mention of that because it is a significantly different project that is going to significantly impact the city, the kids, the children, and it will turn into a destination, so,
And the community.
and the community, correct.
Good news for District 1 and the entire city.
All right, very good.
I'd just like to add, I think this is great for the city. I do think when a project changes and becomes 2.5 times what you expect it to be, we should be informed before we come here to vote on it. And we should know in the future, when there's a major change, we came in expecting to spend 500,000, then we're spending 1.25. This is a big difference, and we should know ahead of time before that. And if there's a big change, we should know.
And I agree, and we're put in a position of either get that swimming pool built by April or whatever the date is, so the children can enjoy it next summer, or abrogating a decent policy of getting more than one bid.
And I agree with what you're saying, but if we're going to do that, we need to do that with every single project and initiative we present to the city.
Nothing wrong with that.
And with this one, time was a factor. So we didn't have, even if we had none, we still don't have much time.
We're making
We got to
time
get
a
to
factor.
work.
But this particular project is, you're right, it is time sensitive. It's a promise we made to the community, and it's something that we're actually going to see happen in fruition within a year.
It's time sensitive because we're making it time sensitive.
It should be time sensitive.
Right.
This city should have a city pool. It is unacceptable that a city like Aiken, South Carolina, does not have a swimming hole for its citizens and its low-income families, and a destination for, I mean, that's what we promote in Aiken, families, and we need to have it.
And we took that away the entire summer. So
Well,
we promised.
we didn't take it away.
Well, we didn't take it away. It needed some
But-
repairs.
Yeah,
and-
That's
broke.
right, that's right. And
Because
I'm-
it wasn't kept up
Exactly.
properly.
And this did go out for bids, and only one company bid to do the work. All right, all those in favor on first reading of an ordinance to authorize an interfund loan for capital project sales tax for project, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous, thank you. Moving down to that section on our agenda, petitions and requests. Item number 1, this is a resolution approving acceptance of deed of dedication for streets and stormwater structures in Springstone Villas. By title, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a deed of dedication for roads and detention area in Springstone from Country Home Builders of Aiken LLC. Is there a motion?
I so moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Councilman Giardo, comments from staff?
Yes, the developers of Springstone Villas are requesting a deed of dedication to include the streets and stormwater structures, including the detention pond. This deed of dedication includes Lynn Drive and Khaki Court in Springstone Villas. We've reviewed the roads, streets, and other stormwater structures and recommend acceptance of this deed of dedication.
Very good, Mr.
We
Giardo.
have already accepted the water and sewer facilities when this was built back in the mid-2000s. And there were issues. This is why there was a lag between the time of the development, and they have made the corrective measures to our satisfaction, both our staff, and we did get a consultant in also to review our work.
All right. Thank you, sir. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
Just for the record, can we state that this includes about 3 acres in terms of accepting that? Is that right?
That, yes, to include the stormwater pond and related infrastructure. It is approximately 3 acres.
Very good. All those in favor of accepting this resolution, approving the acceptance of a deed of dedication for the streets and the stormwater structures in Springstone Village, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to our information, anything for issues and updates?
We do have the Opportunity Zone workshop that's October 10th at Newberry Hall, and with Senator Scott. We did have an Opportunity Zone meeting with our consultant last Wednesday that was well attended, and we will be any council members that want to attend that workshop on October 10th, please let us know. We have reserved space for all of you. I know Mr. DeLore has already told me he is unable to make it, but if you are able to come, please let me know. We do have space for you.
For tickets, so
So did I.
Very
give it
good.
away.
Very good. All right, with that, is there a motion to adjourn? Diggs, second. Councilman Jardo, all those in favor, please stand up. We're adjourned.
Hold up her desk.